Quite often I get young kids and teenagers in my office, and I have for ever since I started my practice. So about 5 years ago, had this young woman come to me, and she was in junior high, probably 8th grade, and she was a top athlete, and her hips and her legs were hurting. And so she came, and I worked on her, and of course I'm intuitive, and they love that because kids love hearing what's going on in their body. So I started to tell her all that was going on in her body, and I started to say, and I feel like this is what your body's telling me, is that you feel stressed by all the workouts, and that you don't have your own life, and that you don't have time to really hang with your friends and things like that. And I said, and you feel worn out. And at the time, she's in junior high, and she just barely could even acknowledge what I was saying, but she just would be like, she kind of would acknowledge it, but it was hard for her to say anything because, first of all, if she did say anything, then she would probably think, well, I will tell her parents, and her parents will get mad at her for not wanting to play the sports and things like that. So I knew where she was coming from, but I just would give a voice to her body. And whatever God was telling me to tell her, I would tell her. So she loved coming to me, and she would come to me throughout the years. And this past year, she was a senior in high school, and she came to me about 6 months ago, and it was a beautiful time. She came to me about 2 or 3 times because her hips and her legs were hurting. And this time, what was coming out of her body was even more intense. See, the body gets louder and louder when we don't listen to it. And her body was saying, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm fatigued, I'm exhausted. There even also in her body were some boyfriend issues and some friend issues and some fear issues from about college, and all this stuff was coming out. And she loved it this time. As she's getting older and she could actually converse with me a little bit more, we had some great talks. And I said to her, I know that you're ready to go to college next year, and I know you're already signed up, so it must feel very daunting to you to feel like you don't want to do this. And she said, yes. And I said, and I'm sure that you feel like you're going to let down your mom and dad and how much time and money they spent on you getting to this place. And she said, yes. I said, I honor how you feel. I'm just here to tell you your body is screaming that you want to stop. I said, but that is your journey, and I honor whatever you decide. But what I encourage you to do is to have some quiet time with yourself and come to a place of peace. Whether you move on and keep continuing on with your sports, you want to continue on with a full heart towards that, because this back and forth is really confusing you, and your body is just getting more issues and more hurt things that are coming up, and you're actually feeling anxious and anxiety. And then I said, so have some quiet time with yourself and really honor yourself, and then pray for the right answer. I forget what I exactly said to her, but it was so special because probably a month or so later, after we had our couple sessions together, she texted me and she's like, hey Kristen, how are you? And I was like, fine, how are you doing? She goes, I wanted to tell you thank you. Thank you so much for always being a voice for when I didn't feel like I had a voice. And she said, I finally told my parents I don't want to play college sports. She goes, and I feel so free and so happy. And I want to thank you for always being there for me. I couldn't have done it without you. And I said, it is my honor to walk through this with you. I said, whether you stayed or whether you in sports or whether you didn't, really, you needed to come to that decision, is what I told her. And I said, I'm so proud of you because it must have been scary. She said, yes, it was so scary, but I've been wanting to do this for so long, and I finally feel free to be me. And I loved that. I loved that feedback that she finally had a voice to the things that her body was getting so many issues with, and pain and anxiety and depression and things like that. So that was a beautiful case. I had another case of a young man that came in, and he just had this chronic pain in his arm. And he just, he's like a studly young man. I think he was a senior in high school too. And he's just like, well, my mom said you're really good at fixing issues. My arm just hurts. I said, okay, I will definitely work on your arm. And I told him I'm also intuitive, so if you want me to tell you what I feel is going on, maybe that's causing some of the issues in your arm, would you like to hear that? He said, sure. And so as I'm working on his arm, it was all this pent up energy. Like, I really don't know if I've worked on someone, a young person like this, that had so much pent up energy where it was just pouring out of his whole being. And so I started to talk for him and his body. And I just heard what God was saying, because again, I see visions and I get messages, or I'll get words. And so we started to piece together the story of his life that actually brought all this pain in his arm. And it was a lot of, again, pressure from playing sports, and from parents too. And so parents, we don't mean to do this, because we see talent in our children and we want to encourage them to be the best they can, but the kids feel a lot of pressure. And I'm not here to say pressure is wrong or right. I'm just saying what is going on in my client's body. So this young man, after I think I did like an hour and a half work on him and did some Reiki at the end and stuff, I feel like his jaw was down to the floor. He was like, wow, I feel so much better. And I said, yes, you had so much stored in your body. And he goes, I didn't realize all those things that were happening in my life were actually making me so depressed and hurting me physically and emotionally. And thank you so much. And so I get these kind of things all the time with young kids, because they usually don't have a voice for, or do they understand what's going on in the body. One more case that I thought was really just amazing is this young man who really was suffering from the effects of COVID and being in lockdown, and some other trauma that happened in his life about 5 years ago has led him to this place of severe depression, won't come out of his room, suicidal thoughts, and he's actually on antidepressants. So his mom brought him to me, and at the time she brought him to me, they really couldn't stay they just came for a consultation just to hear what it did. But when he was looking at me, his eyes were so big and filled with tears, and all I read in his eyes were, help me, help me, help me, I'm dying inside. And so before they left, I said, you know what, you guys? I do distant Reiki. I forgot to mention that. And I would love to do distant Reiki for you if that's something that would work in your schedule. And they both said, yeah, that will work. That'd be great. And I said, okay, so we set a time. Let's say it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I said, I'll do 30 minutes. And what I want you to do, I said to the young man, is set the intentions in your heart. So the little prayer in your heart when you're at home for what you want healing, right when we're going to start. And then just stay away from a computer. And you can read a book or go on a walk or take a nap or whatever you want. But for 30 minutes, just have an open heart. And so we set that time. So 3 o'clock comes, I start my Reiki. I don't know what he's doing over there, but I heard later that, he kind of just read a book and relaxed and things like that. And so after the Reiki was done, I get intuitive messages. So even distance, people don't need to be right next to me. And so I had all these messages. So I wrote them down and then I text them. I usually text the parents when I do these type of things, or people who I do distant Reiki with, all the stuff, or we can call and talk on the phone, all the issues that came out of the body. And so we did that. And I said, you can get back to me whenever you want to get back to me. I just wanted to let you know what is going on. The next day I get a phone call and the mom was like, he said for the first time in years, he felt a deep, profound sense of happiness, and he felt joyful at the time of the Reiki, and he wants more. And I said, absolutely, I would love to work with him more. So just like if I was working with someone physically to release the stuck emotion in the body, Reiki, God's power comes through and can do that anywhere. You don't need to be sitting next to me. And so we worked through a lot of his issues, working remotely. and he is actually in a more, his chi is flowing, his life force is flowing more, and he's actually in a more positive state and coming out of his room and making friends and things like that. So I just wanted to share, I get a lot of young kids in my office, and I do a lot of distance stuff with people, distant Reiki, and a lot of hands-on. And as parents of young children, just be aware and watch any kind of subtle changes. Obviously for this young man and these other kids, their issues were coming out through physically and emotionally, but just watch your kids and reach out to people when you feel that your children need help, but you're not quite sure how to get them help. So there's lots of stuff called moving therapy. There's yoga therapy, which is awesome, trauma yoga therapy, and there's somatic experiencing, and there's EMDR, and then there's obviously fascial release therapy, which what I do, and any kind of body work like that. So anyways, I just wanted to share that if you have a young child and they are suffering, try to just be there in love, support and love. Don't hover over them. Don't worry too much about like trying to fix them. Just allow them the space to be who they need to be, and then try to find some fun therapies, because there are so many cool therapies out there. Thank you and have a great day.